I always say tariffs is the most beautiful word to me in the dictionary. Tariff or
Tariffs.
This is a direct attack.
Donald Trump, who changes his mind between, breakfast 11's lunch and supper time.
The headlines spoke of resilience, of reclaiming national pride, and of standing tall against foreign exploitation. The narrative was bold. Tariffs would protect American jobs, punish bad actors, and bring prosperity home. But beneath the slogans and photo ops, a different truth unfolded. One marked not by triumphs, but by setbacks. Factories went dark, orders dried up, paychecks vanished, and the very people who believed they were being defended were the first to be forgotten. This is the side of the story rarely told. The real consequences of trade wars sold as economic salvation. Instead of revival, they brought waves of layoffs, rising costs, and widespread financial pain to the communities they promised to save. Before we dive deeper, tap that like button to support this channel and help us fight the YouTube algorithm. It all started with a bold promise: confront China, restructure global trade, and bring manufacturing back to American soil. But what followed was a surge of tariffs not only on adversaries, but also on long-time allies and vital supply chains that the US economy depends on. The impact was immediate. By early 2025, with a second round of tariffs in effect, nearly 50% of all layoffs in the country were linked to businesses overwhelmed by surging costs. A staggering 145% tariff on Chinese imports rippled across sectors from manufacturing to retail. And China wasn't alone. Tariffs hit goods from the EU, Canada, Mexico, Japan, and South Korea, prompting swift retaliation from global trade partners. The result? America found itself increasingly isolated. Major corporations took notice. General Motors, Ford, and American Eagle, among many others, scaled back their forecasts, halted growth plans, and began laying off workers. Entire communities felt the sting. In Columbus, Indiana, once a model of industrial success, orders from abroad disappeared. Employers slashed hours, layoffs spiked. Decades-old factories posted signs announcing permanent closure. And the workers who were told tariffs would protect their jobs were left jobless, uninsured, and uncertain of what came next. The job losses didn't happen in a vacuum. They triggered a cascade. Families fell behind on mortgages. Local tax bases shrank. Schools faced budget cuts. Food banks struggled to meet demand. While Washington continued to insist the tariffs were a strategic necessity, the toll was mounting. Officials claimed the short-term pain would lead to long-term gain, but the sacrifices weren't being felt in congressional chambers or boardrooms. They were unfolding in break rooms, union halls, and small-town diners, the very places that powered Trump's electoral victories. Then came a turning point in Iowa. John Deere, a Midwestern icon, announced plans to move even more production to Mexico, despite having already laid off thousands of American workers. The backlash was swift. Trump threatened a 200% tariff on imported equipment, but Deere held its ground. The job losses continued. In Michigan, steel workers found themselves caught in a cruel paradox. Tariffs on foreign steel made raw materials pricier. Domestic producers raised prices. Construction slowed. And with that, steel jobs vanished. What was framed as a lifeline for US steel ended up stalling demand altogether. Texas furniture plants shut down as the cost of imported wood and parts soared. Georgia's appliance factories scaled back production. In California, solar energy companies buckled under the weight of inflated raw material prices. The local headlines told individual stories, but together they revealed a national crisis. And it wasn't limited to manufacturing. Farmers were hit hardest. Export tariffs crushed foreign demand for American crops like soybeans, corn, pork, and dairy. China shifted to Brazil. Mexico bought from Argentina. America, once the world's breadbasket, became the backup option. Farmers sold off herds. Grain rotted in silos. Farm equipment went to auction. And as input costs rose, even farms that had been in families for generations began to vanish. By the end of 2025, analysts predicted US farm income would fall by more than $40 billion. The situation wasn't just bad, it was disastrous. Meanwhile, global competitors adapted quickly. Chinese firms relocated production to Vietnam. European companies rerouted goods through the Middle East. South Korean electronics brands shifted operations to Mexico. The world continued trading, just not through the United States. At home, the economic pain was unmistakable. A Yale Budget Lab report warned that April's revised tariffs could shave nearly 1% off GDP growth and result in up to 700,000 lost jobs over 2 years. The Tax Foundation projected average household income losses in the thousands. The Penn-Wharton model foresaw wage stagnation, particularly for low-income earners and regions dependent on manufacturing. And still, the messaging from Washington didn't change. Victory, they said. Only no one could say what had been won. Markets seesawed. Investor confidence waned. Supply chains unravelled. Small businesses faced new import fees they couldn't absorb. Consumers, meanwhile, felt it everywhere from the checkout aisle to the car dealership. In 1 week alone, electronics prices jumped 9%. New cars cost over $2,000 more. Grocery bills soared. For families already struggling with inflation, this wasn't economic protection. It was economic punishment. And the irony was glaring. The same administration that claimed to stand with working Americans was presiding over the most rapid, self-inflicted economic contraction in recent memory. Even US allies began to distance themselves. Canada warned that American tariffs were destabilizing North American trade. Ireland braced for up to 75,000 job losses. Germany, Mexico, and Japan lodged complaints with the WTO. The World Bank cut global growth projections. Domestically, governors on both sides of the aisle raised alarm bells. Ohio's Republican governor urged a pause on steel tariffs. Illinois' Democratic governor accused Washington of deliberately sabotaging the economy. Pennsylvania's manufacturing groups warned the damage might already be permanent. The pushback reached Capitol Hill. Bipartisan members of Congress demanded hearings. Economists testified. Laid-off workers shared their stories. And for the first time, the official narrative began to crack. This wasn't strategy. It was recklessness. Not strength, but desperation. PBS analysis revealed that job gains touted by the administration were inflated, driven by temporary hires and debt-fueled stimulus. As the full impact of tariffs took hold, the truth emerged. Jobs disappeared. Wages froze. Investment stalled. Yet Trump doubled down, promising even steeper tariffs this time on Vietnam, the Philippines, and India. Each announcement sent new shockwaves through already battered industries. One Bloomberg analyst described the strategy as burning your own house down to prove you built it. China's response was swift and calculated. Tariffs were lowered on Brazilian soy and European steel. Domestic subsidies expanded. New bilateral trade deals were fast-tracked, intentionally bypassing the US. And in every global negotiating room, the same question echoed. Is the United States still a reliable partner or the world's biggest risk? Even Trump's base began to fracture. In Wisconsin, unemployed workers confronted campaign volunteers. In Kentucky, farmers demanded explanations at town halls. In Arizona, truckers blamed tariffs for shrinking routes and lost income. The betrayal wasn't symbolic. It was visible in pay stubs, factory gates, and foreclosure notices. Yet, the message from the top never changed. Trust the plan. But the plan was broken. And so was the promise. Because trade wars don't just reveal the costs of economic conflict. They expose the fragility of a system built on illusions. the illusion that punishment is policy. Those slogans make strategy, that tariffs are tools of strength, not sources of pain. What happens next depends on how long the damage is allowed to fester. The administration could pivot, repeal tariffs, rebuild alliances, and invest in homegrown innovation. Or it could keep pressing forward. But if it chooses the latter, one thing is certain: the pain will spread. Because trade wars don't end with victory. They end with exhaustion, and the final cost is always paid by the worker.